Hello, writers and crafters. I'm Valerie Ihsan.
And I'm Erick Mertz.
And this is episode 74 of the podcast, and it's June 29th, 2022, as we record this. Our main topic today is how to catch up when everything is falling down around you and you're so far behind and you're drowning and blah, blah, blah. How do you catch up? That is our topic today. We don't have any new patrons today, but thank you so much for the ongoing patronage from our patrons. And for as low as $1 a month, you can get a shout out on the podcast. We can make announcements for you. And at other tiers, the benefits increase. There's lots of nifty, cool stuff there. Go check out patreon.com/Valerie Ihsan, IHSAN. You know, that's such an odd spelling. It's not English, it's not American.
No.
So but I don't see that it's that difficult, but the typo that happens very frequently for that name is the S and the H get swapped.
I was going to say it's probably an autocorrect thing, right?
I mean, I don't know. Sean is not a word either. So.
Right. Every 5-letter word that I see now just is a Wordle word. And when you said it at one point, I'm like, can I putting that in? It's got 2 vowels. I would get the S and the H, not in order, but anyway.
Ali plays Wordle, and he also plays Quordle. Is that how you say it? It's another one that you play. It's like 4 games that you're playing at the same time, and
my brother-in-law does that. He's like we have this little text group where everybody posts their Wordle when they get it, and it becomes kind of a competition. They're on the East Coast, so of course they're going to get theirs first if they do it in the morning, but everyone, so he does it like twice a week. The whole group will be all happy and celebrating their Wordles, and then you'll get this Quordle block of like 4 of them, and it's a little bit of a like, I'm the king of words.
For a while, he was on a you call it he was doing it every day, a streak. Yeah. And he'd be like, I missed my streak. Damn it.
Here's the tragedy of I got a new phone like 6 weeks ago, and it when I changed everything over, it lost my streak of Wordle, which was at like 48. And when I did it again, it said the streak was 1, and I was,
how is that even possible? Oh, I guess because the app records it, but the app should go over. If you download Spotify app on your new phone, it's going to have all of your playlists and stuff.
Right. Like 60%. Well, Wordle isn't an app. It's just I just play it on the website. So that's weird. That doesn't even make sense. The whole tragedy of it doesn't make sense. None of it made sense because they said everything will transfer over. Like 60% of the things transferred over. Like I was re-entering passwords and doing weird stuff. Anyway, iPhone, shake my fist. What are you reading?
I just finished last night in bed, Project Hail Mary. Totally worth it. I definitely recommend that book.
Interesting. Why don't you ask me what I'm reading?
What are you reading?
I just started Project Hail Mary 2 days ago. On your enthusiasm after the last podcast, I couldn't turn it down.
Couldn't turn it down. It's pretty great. I really liked it. And I'm not a sci-fi reader, so.
It's sciencey, but it is good.
Yeah. What's happening? How far into it are you?
Well, he figured out his name.
Okay.
The name, starting to figure out like where, he just got to the place where the Chinese, like there's like he figured out that there's the Russians and the Chinese, like who's all involved in what he's doing. He's like still piecing things together. I'm like on page 670 or something. It was a little hard in the first.
That's not
chapter.
670, by the way, dear listener.
No, it's 60 or 70. Yeah. Haven't had enough tea yet. So it was the first chapter was a challenge. It had that sort of like, oh my God, what am I? And who am I? And that was a little hard to read, but.
Oh, really? I liked that kind of stuff. I like being thrown in the middle and learning things with the characters.
I like that too. I like the device where he was guessing names and saying it, and the computer kept rejecting it because it wasn't the right name. That was my hook right there. Like I thought, this is clever. I love it. And thanks for the recommendation.
I think you'll like it. So no longer Jailblazers. That was finished.
Finished that book. I mean, I ate that up, man. I just ate it up. I love my basketball, but it's sometimes a little guilty when it just looks a little tabloid when you're reading it, So I have to be a little self-conscious about what I'm reading. I'm a serious person.
So I have not yet started. Actually, that's not true. I am also reading that Craft in the Real World book for a book club, but I'm not really into it. It's pretty academic, and I don't jive with that academic lingo so much. So
quick and dirty definition on your part. Difference between like a craft book that's accessible and a craft book that is like academic. Like, do you have a certain element in the book that you draw the line where you say this is too academic, or is it just a feel?
It's just the language, I think, that the author is using. And yeah, I guess it's just the language. That's what makes it accessible to me or not. And that's true of any book, any novel, any nonfiction book, any, because I first am interested in a book based on the topic.
Right.
And so the book jacket, and then I open it up and like read a couple paragraphs or a couple sentences here and there through, maybe the first page, but usually like in the middle, or I open it to a couple different random places and just read a few sentences and see if it's like lingo or prose that I can sink into and absorb. And if it's kind of not, I didn't want to use the word clunky because that would imply that it's bad writing, but it's not that it's bad writing. It's that it's not a writing style that I enjoy reading.
It's not fluid. Got it. That makes sense. Interesting that you bring up the reading around. I always investigate a book. I read everything. And when I picked up Project Hail Mary, the inside, I have the hardback of it. Thank you. Shout out to my mom who gets those from the library bookstore. In the inside, it had the character's name like on the inside. I thought, oh, okay, well, the mystery of who this person is, like it says Ryland Grace. Oh, spoiler to anybody that might read it, the doctor, But I thought, like, oh my gosh, like this investigating the book bit me here. It almost never does, but it felt a little weird to know the name of before the guy did in the book. I wanted to learn with him. But so you investigate a book, you look at it, you kind of check it out. Yeah, I do that too.
Usually, so when I go to Powell's, I get a basket. And I spend a couple of, I have to spend a couple hours there. If it's only an hour, then I'm like, I can still do it, but it's an aborted mission, So I'm going through and I'm just kind of loading up the basket with stuff that looks interesting via the book jacket, really, and the title and the topic, and throwing them all in. And then I go to the cafe downstairs or upstairs, or I forget where it is actually. Upstairs. So I go to that cafe and I get a coffee and I sit down and I start doing that more investigative, work. Familiar. And then whittle it down, because usually there's hundreds of dollars worth of books in the basket and I try to whittle it down to like 80 or something.
Right. So that's the question. Hard. Do you go into Pals with a list or a budget? They're so each are so limiting, right? You don't want either one.
I was gonna say neither, but
you are chaotic.
It's more of a feel. I am. Yeah,
that's good.
So in terms of next books up, I don't know. This is the stack as of the morning, of June 29th. So this may change by tomorrow, but I have an arc for The Bookwoman's Daughter by Michele Richardson. I don't know if you can see this because I can't even see my camera is covered.
Another printed arc. Well, I got to get in on this bookstore thing.
The Bookwoman of Troublesome Creek is the first one, and I really loved that. That was a historical fiction, 1930s Kentucky, Appalachian. It was based on the Packhorse Library route back in the days when these librarians would ride their horses with their bag of books to all the rural poor folk that couldn't get in to libraries or whatever books, and would loan out books, and they would have a route, and she was the one of the last remaining blues of Kentucky. So this was a colored person that had a blue tinge to her skin. And so there's themes of racism and poverty and prejudice, and that stuff is kind of in the thematic of the book, but it was just riveting. I just really, really loved it. And it's based on actual, people. It's a medical condition. So yeah, it was super fabulous. So this is the second book in that series, I guess. It's the sequel. So that one. Or I don't read short stories, but my coworker reads them a lot. You write them. I know lots of writers that write them. And so I thought I would try a book of short stories. This one's called Magic for Beginners.
Interesting.
By
What's
Kelly Lake.
What genre are we in?
It looks like kind of magical realism, sort of.
Very cool.
I'm not sure though, because there's just a tiny little blurb. Exquisite dreamlike dispatch from the virtuoso storyteller who can do seemingly anything. Reconstructs modern life through an intoxicating prism, conjuring up unforgettable worlds with humor and humanity. So fantasy, maybe? I don't know.
That sounds nice. I like that. Sort of like the Gabriel Garcia Marquez, like magical realism feel is, got that.
100 Years of Solitude is Ali's favorite book, or one of his favorite books.
I think he told me that when we had drinks a few years ago after the Tsunami Books thing. Yeah. It's got like a great first line. That first line about the last thing that this person thought at the firing squad was of ice. It's just that, like, that first line just sets the whole tone of that book. Maybe a reread.
All right, let's get into our main topic.
Let's do it. What do you do when everything's falling apart around you?
I was just going to ask you that. Actually, what I was going to ask you if you've ever been behind. Have you ever fallen behind on your work, Eric? I fall behind all the time.
all the time.
It's kind of my MO these days.
Really?
And yeah, I think it's because I have the entrepreneurial spirit of a full-time writer, and I only have 2 days a week to do that on. So I'm constantly trying to shove full-time work into 2 days, and I have to constantly remind myself that that's just not physically possible. Right. So I have to back off and readjust my expectations of myself and what I can be doing.
There's step number one, readjust expectations.
Which just always, I feel so lame about that. Like, I don't want to lower my expectations. I want to reach for the stars, and then if I fall a little bit, I'm still above average. I don't want to lower my expectations. That just sounds so pedestrian. I don't know.
That's a very visceral feeling for me, that like the disappointment of having to change expectations professionally, creatively, that I can feel it. I know what that feels like in my body. It's when you were saying that, like, I had a little glimmer of it. My method there, I don't know if, like, if we want to talk about methodology, but I, and this partly comes, I am a sports person. I love sports. Like, you're going to lose games. You're going to lose, I played sports in high school, like, losses are just part of it. And I just feel like you have to sometimes just take that loss, feel the loss, experience it. Don't be one of those proud people that can't lose. Because anytime I've had the feeling of like, well, I can't lose right now, I have to push. You're gonna dig a deeper hole, and that's the first thing you do when you find yourself in a hole, is you stop digging, and you got to regroup. So just take the loss, right? I had this experience, like my first year without working a desk job. It was 9 years ago. And it was probably around this time of the year, right? It was in June or July. I just remember like having to walk out of my office, go upstairs, sit outside, and just accept it, because I'd been fighting it for so long. I just had to go up there and just take the hit, and then let it go. And then just regroup. That's the other part. You got to regroup.
Make a new plan. Stan.
Yeah. And I think it helps to, I think feeling the emotional hit of losing helps you prepare for it, because it's always going to happen. I don't care who you are. I don't care how good your plan is. You're going to find yourself back in a hole again. Nobody can prepare for everything. I often daydream, about the person who's just got like a patron and that's funding their life, and they have every profession, they can hire out the best. Like, there's that person out there, but we're not them. So you're going to take another hit. You're going to lose track of time. You're going to get sick. You're going to have to tend to something you don't want to, and it's going to put you behind. You just have to accept it.
I read this book years ago that was really mind-blowing for me. And it's called, I put the link in the show notes. It's called actually, did I write it down? Here it is. Productivity for Creative People, How to Get Creative Work Done in an Always On World by McGuiness. So I put the link in the show notes, and basically it's a short book, but what I pulled out of it is there are 4 things that we as creative / business people work on. One is asset building. So if you're building a website, or you're writing a book, or content marketing, that's all asset building, because it's part of your IP, really.
Right.
The second would be your weekly work, the stuff that you just have to do to keep your business running, paying bills and answering emails and podcasting. Well, I guess this is content marketing, but just the things that you have to do every week or day, depending on how your hours work. The third is like special event, something that you're speaking at a conference, or you're planning a literary event, or, it's something that's out of the norm. A book release. Yeah. Something that's out of the norm, but it takes up a lot of hours of preparation. And then the last thing is backlog. And so that's the catching up of stuff. So for instance, if you are doing your special event planning, then the time that you would spend on that, you can't also, there's things that are going to be left undone. So there'll be a time when you have to go back and catch up with that stuff. And I had never looked at it as a separate task. It just became like this never ending to-do list that never got done, and I never got to cross it off. And it just felt like continual failure every day.
Right. I know that. Yeah, I hear you.
So looking at it like, and I can only do 2 things at a time out of those 4. So you can do your weekly work and you can build an asset, or you can do your weekly work and plan a special event, or you can do your weekly work in your backlog.
I love that you're always adding weekly work in there.
Well, otherwise it becomes backlog.
Right. Yeah. I was just going to say, you can really keep that backlog pared down. You got to do the weekly work.
Right. And eventually, as you build your empire, your writing empire, you're going to have VAs and assistants, theoretically, that will take up some of that weekly work. So then maybe you can do your asset building and plan a special event.
Right.
And you won't have the backlog to deal with because somebody else is doing the weekly work. So but one person kind of can really just juggle 2 at a time. Right. And that to me was, I don't know, it was just so mind-blowing. It was such a different way of looking at all of the things and how to manage them. And maybe it was just different labeled buckets that worked for me. I don't know, but it was just like a mind-blowing book for me. So hopefully that resource will be helpful to some of our listeners.
After I had that first initial, I don't want to call it a breakdown because I didn't really break down, but like I had that, like I described earlier, I just had to walk away and take the loss. I developed a theory for myself, because what was really bogging me at that period was I started out on a freelance, independent person writer, and like my website was just woefully behind. I should have done that first. I should have done that before I left. But then I was taking in new clients. I was doing client work, and I was also trying to like rebuild a website. And that was just, so after that, I developed this theory that there's 3 buckets in your professional world. There's the things that you do well, you know how to do. And these are the things that you're always going to do, right? That's, for me, that's the writing, that's the client conversations, that's the creating of my own stories. Like those, I will always be able to do those things. I'm never going to hire somebody to write my book for me. I'm never going to hire somebody to take my phone calls for me or client service for me. Those are things I'm always going to do. There's this other column on the opposite side these are the things I can't do. These are things like I don't have the skills. They're too time consuming. They're not even, they would cost too much of my time to learn how to do them to be worthwhile. So I have that bucket. And for me, look, I could probably do my website stuff, like the back end technical things. I just have somebody that does it like every 6 months. They go in, they clean things up. I pay them. They do that. It's the time that I am not frustrated over trying to figure out WordPress is gold. Then there's the column that I have in the middle, and these are the unexpected things that crop up that I have to decide, is it worth my time? Because I didn't know that I was going to be making graphics on Canva. When I started out, I didn't know, but I've figured out that I can do this. Like I have enough of a visual sense to make an ad to put up on, to put with a blog, or I can do that. So I moved that over to the column of I'm going to do this. There's other things that I've picked up, like I'm running Google ads and Facebook ads right now. I pay somebody to do that. I move that into that column. So I think one of the ways that you keep the backlog from growing and keep those tasks moving is just, you have to have some real clear boundaries and values on this is what I do, this is what I don't do, and a clear eye for the things in the middle, and be decisive. Like if you're on your business and I am spending way too much time for this, you just move it into that column, get rid of it. Because that extra time that you're getting doing the things that you get paid for, it's, you have to be decisive about that. You can't learn how to do everything, or maybe you can't, but that's not, I think, most people.
I was listening to a podcast last week, Author Like a Boss with Ella Barnard. I never say her last name right, but she was interviewing Willow. Oh my God, I'm forgetting Willow Winters, who's this like.
That's a great name.
Willow Winters. She's a romance author, and I was going to say probably a romance an empire. Author. She's got a publishing company and a nonprofit, and she's got co-authors and like 50 books, and so she really has an empire. And she said one of the best things that she did, and she recommends this book to everybody, is the book Essentialism. So I went out and ordered it. It's coming today. I should put that in the show notes too, but I don't remember who the authors. I'll look it up and put it in the show notes. But yeah, she said basically, and I haven't read it yet, but she said the book helped her say no, so that she could say, it wasn't so that she could say yes to other things. It was more like, if you say no, maybe you'll disappoint people in the short term, but in the long term, you're going to be attracting all of the yes stuff to you.
Yeah.
So then your work is more fulfilling, and you do all those things that you said that are in your bucket, all of the things that you're really good at and that people respect you for and look up to you, and you're the expert in this, and you can do it quickly because it's, second nature to you.
Right.
And you can say no to those other things. And because right now, as baby entrepreneurs, we kind of say yes to everything just to get clients or to get the experience, or we're excited about the project and we just forget how long it's going to actually take, or whatever. And also the conditioning. I don't know about you, but as a woman, you say yes and you do everything for other people, and that becomes kind of it becomes part of you, even though you logically say, no, I don't want to be that kind of person. It's still sort of a knee-jerk, response to, I have to make everyone else happy. and do the things for other people.
Yeah. I mean, I'm my mother's son, and it's hard for me to say no to things. And I would say like one of the watershed moments professionally for me was that I said no. Like there was a job, it wasn't enough money for the time. And I did the calculus and said, it's better for me to wait for something else than it is to say yes to this thing, and that was really hard. And then, but it became this addictive, like it became like running, like the way people describe running, like it's grueling, it's difficult, but like getting to the no felt good and it was worth the effort. I say yes. I have a regular client, quick anecdote, guy is great, has really fantastic screenplay ideas. I really like talking to him. I really love his ideas. He just doesn't have money. He pays, in the beginning, I took everything. And so I was writing screenplays for less than I was worth. And now, it's just hard because I've had to tell him no a couple of times. I've actually found him another screenwriter that would work for the money that he had, kind of more of a hobbyist. So it's hard, and I still, when he called actually last Friday because he was really into an idea. It still breaks me up a little bit to think, oh, I'm not going to write that. I love the idea. Send them, but you have to do those things because if you do say yes, you are to everything. You are short circuiting something else. You're putting something else in the backlog.
Yeah. Two things that came to mind when you said that was, one, if you do feel like, and I'm not saying you should do this with this gentleman, but in your business, if an entrepreneur feels the need to scholarship someone or, heavily discount their services for someone, you can build that into your business philosophy. Yeah. So you can say, like, every quarter I'm going to, offer a free service up to, this amount of money or something like that, just so that it's built in, you're expecting it, there's some feel goodness that comes with that, but also it helps writers out, and it's, so you can still feel like you're giving back, but not, at your discomfort or at your, that you're hurting yourself and your finances by doing that. And then I already forgot the other thing I was going to say.
Well, so that to your point,
I know what it was.
Go.
I remember one time I fired a client because it was causing me so much stress to work with them. Every time I'd get an email for a new job, I would just like break into a sweat and just be I just did not want to work for this person anymore. The work was not what I signed up for. It was too hard. I wasn't getting paid enough. I didn't like the work. It was always rush jobs. So I had to drop everything in my life, not just work, but life, to get the thing done. And I hated it so much, but it was like a major part of my income and I had to fire her. So, and I just, like you said, I had that like, okay, if I let this go, it's just going to give me space for the kind of clients that I do want.
Right.
And of course they come, you have to have the space in order for that stuff to come in.
Right. And I had that happen recently where there was somebody who, I want repeat clients. I will always prioritize somebody who I feel like is going to be a repeat client. And I had a potential repeat client come through. And the first job was a rush job that came with a browbeating. And then it was another rush job that came with a brow. And I thought, like, you know what? I don't need this. I don't care if the faucet will run forever. I'm not going to like always have to drop things for you. And then, we could talk about abusive clients a whole nother time, but you just don't, right. Like, and the person themselves doesn't have to be abusive. I guess that's more the point. Like if you're taking away from things that you need to feel good about your job, the client could be the nicest client in the world. They're not helping you help yourself. And I think like the best clients for me are the ones I feel this like simpatico with, where like I have a couple of great clients right now where we just have an ebb and flow. Like they'll know, hey, I've got a rough week. The kid's not in camp. I'm taking a little more time for myself. It's going to take me longer. And they say, great, let me know. You have to have that. You do, because ideally, if you're in the writer services business, you're an entrepreneur working for other entrepreneurs, and you have a mutual understanding of what it takes to keep the thing, to keep doing what you're doing. And to your first point, yeah, I always have I've got a couple of clients that fit that. I got a guy that I do things for because he's on a budget and I just like him. And this is the thing he's the guy that I'm helping. And it feels good. You have to have something like that you're not everybody's like a cash register. You can't treat people like that.
That's true. And in reference to the other thing you were talking about, I think that falls under the boundaries category, so if you just have to stick with your own boundaries and spend some time figuring out what those are.
Oh yeah.
And like, where's your bottom line and where do you actually want to operate under? And then how low will you go?
Right.
And then just start cutting people off because you have to
have an idea. Have an idea of what your business is about and make sure the things you're doing fit your values. And some of those values are profit, have dynamic values, right? Like some of your values are, I need to survive. And other values are, I want to work for cool people. And you have to just find the blend of that. And if you're maximizing your time and energy, you can accomplish that. It's just, it takes practice. You're not going to get it the first shot through.
That's true.
It takes time.
So how to catch up when you've fallen behind?
Stop digging when you're in the hole. Stop digging. Stop. Just accept the loss and stop.
And also treat backlog as your job. Like if you have fallen so far behind, you can just make that be your next project, is just to catch up. I mean, sometimes that happens naturally when you come back from vacation or something like that, and you just spend the day like reading all your emails and like responding to stuff that happened while you were gone. And I think having a morning routine or some sort of routine that gets you into your flow state is good to like power you through. If I've got too much on my plate, sometimes I have to just completely let go, put the blinders up and just start walking, one foot in front of the other.
Right.
What's right in front of me? Let's just do this. Let's just do this and just start digging, until it's done, and then make a plan to not do that again, or double my estimation on how long things take. And those are all tools that I use. Reset my strategies. Also,
don't have a plan that's so rigid that it can't, like the first thing that tests it makes it fall apart. Part of your plan has to be flexibility, and it has to be responsive. It can't be all strength. You got to be flexible too. Yeah,
absolutely. A parting thought I heard on a podcast yesterday, cool. Diary of a CEO, I think was the one I was listening to. There was a quote that just sort of like blew me out of the water. And it said, our job is not to be the best, which is mind blowing all in of itself. Because, I kind of feel like that is. So our job is not to be the best. It's to do your best.
Oh boy. So I'm going to say that 3 times today.
That felt really good because you can only do what you can do. And sometimes your best is different every day. So if you just show up and do your best, then you're doing your job.
That's golden advice the world does not give very often. I love it. Thank you for that.
And a similar one actually that I use frequently, if we're talking mantras as we end the conversation, is Tex Thompson. Do you remember she comes and talks she's awesome. Tex. This writer from Texas. She always wears the red shirt and the red hat, and she has a great newsletter. So if you want to,
I was just going to say the best newsletter ever. Like all the locksmithing stuff and the she's great.
Yeah. So one of her newsletters a couple years ago, and I still use this, she was just talking about, sometimes all you can do is hold the line, when you're talking like military or something like that, where you're just holding the line and just not letting anything get past. And sometimes you can't advance. You just don't have it in you for whatever reason. So if you can just hold the line, some days that's all there is. And I took such comfort in that. And, it's almost become the mantra. So when I'm having a really bad day, I'm like, my weekly win is I've held the line. Like,
right.
And I am proud of that.
That's a great mantra, and it's a good one to end on.
Yes. Thanks for talking with me, Eric. This was a really comforting conversation, actually.
Great. Thank you. Yeah.
So our next episode is either a coaching session with Eric, as you like, I don't want to do that online.
I do. I just want to be like, well, yeah, we should have a conversation before we do that. I don't, like I said, I might like lay on a couch like we're in a therapist's office or something for that one.
Or we can talk about marketing.
Ooh, let's dissect me. Like, let's put marketing is so, like, I feel like if the longer we put off marketing, the more we'll know about it. So we might as well just put it off forever. Is that bad?
No, not at all. I would love to start a coaching session with you. I think
let's do that next week. We'll do a coaching session with me.
All right, that sounds excellent. So see you next time, writers and crafters. Keep writing and have a great week. Hold that line.
Have a great week. Hold it.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.